Yeah, real sounds of Africa there to once again kick off our World Football Phone-In. And this morning we're talking football in Africa and South America and players from over there playing in our leagues. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions or comments, or you just want to take part in the conversation, that's fine by us. The number to call in that case is 08085 909 693. That's 08085 909 693. And you're very welcome to call us from overseas as well. If you can't do that, then just write us an email to upallnight@bbc.co.uk. If you include your phone number, we'll call you back. Give us a call, 08085 909 693. Drop us an email, upallnight@bbc.co.uk. Let me introduce you to our experts this morning. The oracle of African football is Mark Gleeson. We call him the Springbokker Junior. Good morning.
Good morning, Dalton.
Are you in Cape Town this morning?
No, sir. I am in Nelspruit, which is in the east of the country. Did a big football game last night between Kaizer Chiefs and SuperSport United in the local league, and I will be heading, as soon as we finish this morning, off to the game park for a couple of days.
Well, immediately there's about 1,000 questions for you from me, so I can imagine what listeners are thinking. And we'll start with the game park in a moment and work our way backwards. Anyway, the other side of our conundrum this morning is South America, and there for us in Rio, I presume, is the legendino, who of course is Tim Vickery. Hello, mate.
Yeah, and I've got a question as well. The first question would be, can you please say Nelspruit again? It was great. I love these South African pronunciations. Anyway, very good morning, everyone. In these troubled times, how we need a universal language that brings us all together. So it is with pride that we will carry the banner of the international football community over the next 2 hours. Your voice is sounding a little bit off, Dot, and it reminds me of my own in the wake of my prostate operation a few years back. I hope nothing similar has happened to you.
Why do you have to lower the tone of the conversation? And why do you have to link your prostrate with my voice? There is no link, mate. Anyway, in the same...
Just as well.
Yeah, exactly. In the tone that you have both started the conversation this morning, let me tell you, I've had a tweet from Mark who says, not you, another Mark, obviously, who says, great, Glees and Vickery are the Gordon Greenwich and Desmond Haynes of the World Football Phone-In. It's always good, but when these two are on, it's exceptional. Oh, that's decent praise, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, who's the Haynes and who's the Greenwich, though? Because I think Haynes was a little more flamboyant. Greenwich was a little more solid.
Well, I know.
No, you're the flamboyant one. You're Glees Lightning.
No. It doesn't work like that.
Go.
It does not work like that. It's for us, me and the listeners, to decide who's the Gordon Greenwich and who's the Desmond Haynes. And we've already decided. So you hold your corner, mate. First question then from Avnish to you, Mark. How is Sadio Mane's latest exploits being reported on the continent? Thanks for a great show, gents.
Well, obviously, I mean, I don't know what the television figures are, but I would reckon they're pretty considerable, as would be the case, I presume, in Asia and in South America for that, particularly for that Champions League game on Wednesday. But absolutely going nuts here about the performance of Mane. And also, it's interesting how quiet things have been about Salah, because he just hasn't had the same kind of year as he did last year. He was runaway winner of the African Football of the Year award for a second time. And I think it's really been Mane's first 3 months now of this new year, capped by that performance on Wednesday, and certainly on this continent, everybody's going nuts about it.
How do you explain the transformation? Because last year he wasn't as... Well, in fact, this season he hasn't been as consistent as he has previously. How do you explain the transformation? Is he a big game player, for example?
No, I think quite a lot of it's got to do with the World Cup. I think all of the hassles that he had going into that tournament, the fact that he competed in that tournament, the pressures that were on him. So, and some of the form that he had on the back of that tournament could be put down a bit to fatigue or this. Although obviously Mane also went there with Senegal. I think there's a closer eye on him this season, and in a way, it's allowed Mane to flourish somewhat.
Tim, lots of questions coming in your direction as well. Let's start them one by one. This is from our listener in Toronto, Nick, who says, question for Tim, my dad was born in Uruguay and emigrated to Canada in the 1970s, but the honeymoon was short-lived and my grandparents ended up moving back to Uruguay. In 2016, my nan passed away and requested to have, my granddad rather, he says my nono, is that a Spanish word for granddad?
Yeah, it's kind of nan, kind of nickname. It's kind of nickname terms for it.
Right, but this is definitely granddad.
Endearing.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So
yeah.
my
if it's an O, it's the man. If it's the A, it's the woman.
Okay, this is Nono. My Nono passed away and requested to have his ashes sprinkled on the fields of Rampla Juniors in Montevideo. I was wondering if Tim knew anything at all about the club, its history, or its current form. And if not, I'm also curious about the history of Peñarol and Nacional in terms of their formation and traditional fan bases, or anything else that might be interesting about Uruguay's two big clubs. All the best and keep up the good work.
Well, the Nacional and Peñarol, the big two, are so much bigger than anyone else. I mean, to give you an idea, and that the press coverage in Uruguayan football will be like 1/3 Nacional, 1/3 Peñarol, and 1/3 all the rest of the teams at best. If not more for Nacional and Peñarol. So that is the big divide. It's one of the great derbies in the world, I think, Nacional and Peñarol. And what that really there's an element of class here. And Peñarol actually started life with the name of, is it Central Uruguayan Railway Cricket Club, which is a bit of a mouthful, even if you have English as a first language. Imagine the fans at the side of the field, don't speak English, chanting for Central Uruguay Railway Cricket Club. Cook, Captain Cook, and it was started by an English-led railway company, but then kind of went native. Peñarol is a name of the neighbourhood, and they are very associated with the Italian immigrants, and almost all of Uruguay is immigrant population, either Italy or Spain. Peñarol are more associated with the Italians, who are a little bit lower down the social scale. Hence the fact that they were taunted by their opponents for being too poor to eat properly. So they were called the Magna Mierda, which is a kind of mixture of Italian and Spanish for eaters of excrement. And that was a taunt that was thrown at them. And in the way of these things, they have taken it on as a badge of pride. So they refer to themselves in these days as the Mania. Nacional are the team of a little bit higher up the social scale of the more Spanish immigrants, and that is a huge divide in Uruguay. Rampla Juniors, I mean, Uruguay only has one city of note. And it's got Punta del Este, which is a kind of tourist resort with Maldonado alongside, which is quite nice. It has Fray Bentos as well, which always gets your mouth watering.
No, of course
but
it does.
almost all of the clubs, they come from Uruguay, and they are like neighbourhood clubs. And Rampla Juniors is one of those. And if you are born into that neighbourhood, then you can be really, really into your team. I remember another neighbourhood club coming over for a game here in Rio last year, Liverpool, and going to speak to some of the fans. And it's almost like a kind of English mentality, the pride that they take in supporting smaller teams. Whereas from England... They don't even wear red. I don't quite know why they're and well, they did have Liverpool did have Sebastian Coates. There was some Uruguayan centre back with maybe Scottish roots in his name. But whereas the England the fellow who supports a small club, it's usually from a lesser town. and it's a badge of pride to support the team from your town. In Uruguay, if you're a fan of Rampla Juniors or El Tanque Sisley, which is one of my favourite names, or these hundreds of little community clubs, you're not representing a town. You're representing a little block. Like 300 square meters of Montevideo, and so Rampla Juniors have been around for years and years and years. They're over 100 years old, and they're just one of those many little neighbourhood clubs in Uruguay. So clearly, the granddad of Nick there had a very strong connection with that particular neighbourhood.
There was a caller who wanted to speak to both of you, I think. Is this Jesse? Hello.
Hi, how you guys doing? Yes, this is Jesse.
And where are you calling from, Jesse?
Houston, Texas.
Ah, right. Did we speak to you before?
I see. I knew that.
Yes,
I was going to jump in there and say he's from Houston, Texas, like Archie Bell and the Drells.
Oh, that's a good connection. I thought you'd go for like the NASA Mission Control, NASA.
Yeah, but no, Archie Bell and the Drells. They're from Houston, Texas, and they don't only sing; they dance as good as they want. But my only time in Houston, I was in Houston for the Copper Centenario 3 years ago. I met a fella called Archie Bell. It wasn't the Archie Bell, unfortunately, but it was Archie Bell from Houston, which made my day.
Are you impressed, Jesse?
And you see, I'm actually very sorry. I do not know who Archie Bell is. I apologize.
Oh, wow. Don't
That's
worry.
some homework for me. I do not know who that
Jesse,
is.
Jesse,
you'll enjoy
you have
it.
to tighten up.
You'll enjoy
Tighten up.
Yes, Mark.
Could you count him down to the question?
I could actually. I could. But no, he's a good old sport, so let's not do that for now. But it'll be 11, 10, 9, 8. And we haven't even started talking about the Houston Rockets yet. Do you get it?
We have a problem.
We do have a problem.
A problem indeed.
Yeah, we won't count you down, Jesse. You take your time. But feel free to ask the question anytime this year.
Yes, sir. No problem. Absolutely. So I had 3 questions just because my favorite player scored a hat trick this week. So in honor of Cristiano Ronaldo, just quick 3 questions, one for each, and then one both can actually answer. For Tim, I was wondering, with what's going on in Venezuela politically, economically, socially, where does the national team stand as far as their hopes to qualify for the new tournament that actually has 48 spots?
Good question, Jesse. Good question. That's the kind of question I like because you brought in football, culture, politics, the social situation of ordinary people. It's a great question.
Yes, sir. And for Mark Gleason, I wanted to know where does South Africa stand as far as a superpower in Africa? It's actually one of the teams that I was very impressed in watching when I watched the African Cup of Nations, just because I know some of the players, the clubs like the Kaiser Chiefs and stuff like that, Orlando Pirates. I know some of the players, and I was just wondering why they haven't been able to eclipse any type of good performances in international tournaments. And if there is a superpower in Africa, who is the next one to take that mantle? And the question for both, is playing a traditional number 9 striker old-fashioned or going out of style, like Holland had Van Basten or David Secor in Croatia's team back in the 90s? Is that just the old, out-of-date style of play for coaches and managers? Is that something that's going away, or is it just some type of old tradition that's not in style anymore?
I think we take that question first and then the individual questions afterwards, yeah? Let's just take that question alone first. Mark, do you want to go first?
No, I think it really depends again on the clubs and playing personnel. I watched the game last night, in fact, with 2 traditional number 9s. It was a little unusual to see, but...
Did they not bump into each other?
No, they played off each other quite well, and at times actually they were too far apart, and it's something that the coach moaned about afterwards. He felt that at half time he had to tell them to get a little close together to be a bit more effective, but it is a little unusual. I mean, there's a lot of talk about false nines, and we see, in South Africa in particular, there's a lot of midfielders who come through and play and score goals. There's a big movement lately towards that sort of style of football where you don't even play a recognised striker, but I think the place for a big physical presence up front in a sort of traditional number 9 position, picking up, being a target man, getting to set pieces, etc., is very much still a big part of the game. It might be a little old-fashioned, but I think it's you ask any decent manager if he could have a sort of a hybrid Ronaldo stroke Peter Crouch, and I'm sure he'd take it.
Tim?
But in a way, what Cristiano Ronaldo did in the week is a little bit like an old-fashioned number 9. He's reinvented himself as a player, and he is. I think he's probably the best I've ever seen in the air. He's magnificent in the air. He's extraordinary, what he does so well is, right, we're up against Atletico Madrid. They've got 2 centre-backs who will head the ball away all day long, so I'm not going to jump against them. I'm going to find a little bit of space on the far post and jump against the full-backs who are not that tall and not that good in the air. That route, that's how Juventus got past Atletico Madrid. With good crosses coming in. Atletico Madrid, I thought were dreadful stopping the crosses at source. And you had someone who has transformed himself in the many things that he can do into something like a variation on an old-fashioned number 9. I think it's still, depending on the playing personnel that you have, an extremely valid way of playing. If you don't have the technique to pass your way through the opposition, then why not go direct? I think that is still totally valid. And if you do have the technique to do that, then by all means do it. But even with Barcelona, now, Luis Suarez is something of an old-fashioned number 9. I mean, Luis Suarez perhaps is changing his characteristics just a little bit because he's losing some of his pace. But his success at Barcelona has been stretching the opposing defence, getting on the shoulder of the last defender, which is what an old-fashioned number 9 does as well. One of the things that does is drive the opposing defensive line deeper and create space for the likes of Messi. So I very, very much believe in the value of a penalty area performer. It does seem to be true that there aren't so many of them around at the top level as there used to be. There are lots where I live in Brazil, but they tend to be lampposts. They're just these immobile figures who play 30 or 40 yards away from the rest of the team. That's one of the reasons I think Brazil is killing off its centre forwards, that they seem to play so isolated. But I still think it's a very, very valid way of playing. And no, I don't see it as old fashioned. And I think that sometimes trends in football go in cycles. And I think that there will always be a move back to the number 9. I mean, look at the trend at the moment for which I think has gone too far, for wingers playing on the wrong foot, so left-footed wingers playing on the right and right-footed wingers playing on the left, so that they can cut in towards goal. I don't remember seeing that like 30, 40 years ago. That was very, very rare. But it's now a big fashion. I suspect that a lot of coaches will come to the conclusion that their players are effectively marking themselves because they're funneling inwards and closing down their own space in the final third of the field and making it easier for the opponents to mark them. So I think there might be a rethink on that, with left-footers going back to the left and right-footers going back to the right. So things, what goes around comes around, and I'm sure that the old-fashioned centre forward will always be a part of the game. No, and I think the performance of Cristiano Ronaldo and how he worked out where to attack the far post, jump against the fullbacks, is an object lesson for where a number 9 who's good in the air can do most damage. With reference to Venezuela, the problems in the country are beginning to bite. There was one game in the Copa Libertadores, South America's Champions League this week, that couldn't be played because the Venezuelan team just couldn't get out of the country. They couldn't get on a plane and get out. The game in Venezuela the previous week had to be moved from Thursday night to Friday afternoon because of the electricity problems. No floodlights. There was a league game at the weekend when the two sides just refused to play and just messed around for 90 minutes. So it's starting to bite into domestic football, which has proved quite resolute. But in terms of the national team, I think you can clearly separate the domestic situation with the national team. We don't know yet if the next World Cup is going to have 48 or 32. I think there are geopolitical problems to having 48. But even if it's 32, Venezuela think they'll qualify. And they'll think they'll qualify based on the work that they've been doing at under-20 level. 2 years ago, their under-20 team, they not only qualified for the World Under-20 Cup, which Brazil didn't, they got to the final and lost to England 1-0 in the final and missed a penalty. And they think that generation will take them through to the World Cup. They think they've got some very, very promising players. And key for this separation between the domestic scene and the international scene is almost everyone plays abroad. I mean, they're going to Spain now. They're playing Argentina next Friday, and they've got a game against Catalonia afterwards. Of the squad, 25-man squad, there's only one home-based player. So all of their players now, all of their international players, are all scattered over the Americas and Europe, picking up top-class experience. So I think we can clearly see a separation between the domestic problems and their international prospects, which look very good.
Mark, powerhouses in African football?
Nigeria, Ghana. But I think overall, both club and national team level, you've got to look at the Arabic-speaking countries just in terms of the way they've dominated the club game on the continent. Egypt would be number one, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, surprisingly small country in terms of population, but really do box above their weight. And then to answer the question about South Africa, and that is the $100 million question, is why is such a country with such good infrastructure, such a big league. We've spoken about it before on the show, how much money there is in the South African professional league, and how many players come from all over the world to compete in it, and yet the national team just seems to bumble along. I think we're number 74 at the moment in the FIFA rankings. Closely pursued by Papua New Guinea and other footballing greats. It's a source of great mystery and frustration, obviously, to South African fans. And I think, on the balance of talent, etc., the country should always consistently be a top 10 African nation, if not a top 5, but just year after year, just absolutely do not deliver on their potential. And there's a massive game coming up next Sunday, South Africa playing against Libya in the last of the qualifying games for the 2019 Nations Cup finals, which are in Egypt in June. And South Africa just need to avoid defeat in that game. It's an away game, and when you play Libya these days, you don't play in Libya. You play away from home. You play it as rather a neutral venue of Libya's choice. They've chosen Tunisia, which is next door. There'll be hardly any crowds, so there's not a hostile environment to deal with. Yet there is this nagging feeling, I think, throughout the sort of South African community, the footballing community, that Libya get the victory that they require. South Africa will finish third in the group and fail yet again to go to the African Nations Cup finals. In other words, miss out on the top 24 places on the continent and be in the bottom half of the numbers in African football, and that would be a massive, massive setback as well.
How could you not beat Libya, given the country's troubles? Libya divided perhaps in two, with no recognised. How can you not beat them?
They hardly have a professional league. They bumble along. They've got no home advantage. Haven't had so for the last 8 years. The one positive they do have is that the national team sort of sticks together almost like a club side. They have a lot of time to work with them. But that's exactly the question. Libya came to South Africa earlier on in the group and got a goalless draw and looked very good. Made on points, if it was a boxing fight, would have gone away with the belt. So it's a perplexing problem, particularly at this early in the morning to go on about South Africa's woes would stretch me past Tim and Mina.
Well, we'll come back to you in the afternoon then. No, on a serious note, the number to call if you'd like to join in the World Football Phone in this morning is 08085 909 693. And if you can't get through by phone, then you can always drop us an email, upallnight@bbc.co.uk. If you include your own phone number in that email, we'll call you back, as Johnson in Nairobi is done.
Sorry, if I may just interrupt before you start,
Sure.
just on the subject of Libya and Liverpool of Uruguay, you know, there's a common connection. There was a goalkeeper from Liverpool in Uruguay who went to go and play in Libya and eventually landed up being given a passport and actually played for them in one of their very rare African Nations Cup finals appearances. I don't know if he could speak any Arabic and whether he's ever been back to Libya since his football career ended. But Luis D'Agostini was a distinguished Libyan international goalkeeper originally from Liverpool in Uruguay.
Johnson in Nairobi is with us. Hello, Johnson.
Hello, morning.
And just to let people know, you sent us your phone number by email, so the magic does work.
Yes, it does. I am, how can I say, I think I'll speak to the effectiveness of the magic of technology.
Absolutely. Anyway, great to have you on. You got a great question as well, I see.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say good morning to the Springboker and to Tim. I'm not sure whether it's morning in Rio already.
Morning.
I'm not good with my time zone.
Coming up to
Morning.
midnight.
Oh, okay. So good morning in waiting. I was fasting off the phone.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, so my question goes to the Springboker, and I think I have a sub-question along the same lines as well. So it's with regards to the development of football in my region, which is East Africa. So lately I've seen two Kenyan footballers. I think two is a minimum, I'm sure there are more, making their way to the Chinese league and the Japanese league. So Kenya's top striker, Michael Olunga, is now playing somewhere in Japan, while a winger called Ayub Timbe was playing somewhere in China. So does this point to a trend with regards to the movement of Kenyan players and East African players to the Asian and Chinese leagues? And my sub-question is, does this bode well for the East African region in that are we now slowly growing into that powerhouse in terms of player development?
Well, I wouldn't call two players going there exactly a trend, but I mean, there's been migration of African footballers to those particular leagues since they started, you know, and you mustn't forget as well in places like Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., where there's also decent football leagues. There's always been a good, healthy African contingent, mostly from countries like Nigeria and Cameroon, but. I think these days any migration of footballers to foreign climes does give them a little bit of an advantage. It does improve their playing ability, and it's only to the benefit of the national team. I think what Kenya's really got to worry about is getting more Victor Wanyamas and Mike Moringas playing in the bigger clubs. Wanyama, obviously from Tottenham. Moringa, I think it's his brother or his cousin who was once on the older brother who was once on the books of Inter Milan. That's the kind of profile that you want for a Kenyan side. But I think it's great for the African game to see Kenya back in the Nations Cup finals, already having qualified. Big game against Ghana coming up this weekend, and I think they could put a good performance in at the finals in Egypt in June, and that could only bode well for football in East Africa, which, like the South African dilemma, is another sort of $100 million question, is why is a country like Kenya, also with a great infrastructure, pretty good domestic league, why have they only been to the Nations Cup now in 2019? The last time they were there was 15 years ago, 2004. Why are they producing those kind of results when surely they could be doing a lot better?
Johnson, do you care to answer that?
I can speak from my own point of view as a Kenyan football fan / Sunday League footballer. Okay, I think in my own opinion, I think that the issues are twofold. Or rather, it's just one huge issue. I think it's just generally the lack of investment from the relevant federation, because I'm not quite sure about this, but I heard about something that took place in Iceland a few years back where they really invested in a huge number of 3G pitches all over the country to enable people to develop their skills. So we don't have such. They're slowly mushrooming about some small places where they have artificial turf, but that's mostly around the capital city. And Kenya is really, really huge. I think it's the 8th largest country in terms of land mass. I'm not quite sure. So only having such turf in urban areas really limits our potential, because I'm really sure that in the rural areas of Kenya, there are very, very talented footballers, people who can play like Ronaldo without even wearing boots on their feet. So I feel like it's just in terms of the infrastructure, focus on infrastructure, and also poor focus on coaching, because personally, I really want to do a coaching course, because too much football manager has got into my head. But I've really tried getting a place where I can start and kick off my career as a coach, because I think I've been forced into early retirement because of an injury. But now making the transition from player to coach in this region is impossible. And I'm sure a high number of the coaches in the highest level of the game in Kenya aren't really as qualified with the pro licenses, the CAF B, CAF A. Most of them are just former players who have experience of being trained by another coach a few years ago. And this is like a continuous cycle going back to the generations. So poor infrastructure development and not enough focus on coaching development, I think, in my opinion. Let me just add that as a disclaimer.
Well, no, you're entitled to your opinion. And by the way, I've also retired from Sunday League out of injury, but my injury was called old age. Are you sure you're not suffering from that as well?
I'm only 26.
Just checking. Hey,
Swap the numbers round and you're closer to his age,
exactly.
I think.
Exactly. You are actually right there.
Can I ask Mark a question on this? And if Johnson has an opinion, because how lucky we are to have someone with their own first-hand experience of wanting to make the transition from player to coach and finding that hard. How lucky we are to have someone sharing that experience with us. So, Mark and Johnson, I imagine that I've never been to Africa, much to my regret, but I imagine there are lots of different physical types around the continent. How much is that a factor in different fortunes of various countries and regions?
Mark, do you want to go first? And Johnson, don't worry, we will get Tim to Africa one of these days. Don't worry about that. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I would say it's a fairly big factor. I mean, your West Africans physiologically are a lot bigger and a lot stronger. I think that's why they do much better in the transition to European football. It's one of the factors, not the only factor, I would say. In Southern Africa, they always lament the size of the players a little bit too small, and I think that's also true a little bit of East Africa. Although, that's not generally true of the entire population, but maybe a little bit more on the footballing side. But it is a factor. But I don't know if it's a determining factor. There's so many other variables in the African game, and so many things that go right and so many things that go wrong that size is not that big an issue.
And Johnson, what would you say?
I also don't think that size is an issue. I think it still boils down to the development of the players from a grassroots level, because you can be as big as Andy Carroll. Andy Carroll is a perfect example because he's huge and he's playing in the Premier League. But you can also be as tiny as someone like Tim Vickery's favorite Colombian player, Juan Fernando Quintero, who's not really huge, but has a footballing brain of like 10 million footballers combined. So I think it just boils down to the development in the early stages. So I think that West Africa also has kind of the upper hand in terms of their player development as compared to the eastern side of the continent. Yeah, so I really don't think it plays that much of a role. More the development rather than the physique.
What about your supplementary question?
Oh, my sub-question, I slipped it in already during my first question with regards to how the movement of East African players to Asia as well for the region in general.
You see, that just shows how long you've been listening to this program. Because not only do you know a sub-question, you know what a sub-question is, but you also know that, strictly speaking, you're not entitled to a sub-question because you don't have a Brazilian shirt name. So you know how to slip it in without us having to get to the point where we say, actually, you're not entitled to one. Well done, mate. I've got to give it to you. Well done. You almost deserve a Brazilian shirt name. Maybe, well, you got,
It's coming.
yeah, it's coming. Keep calling, and it'll be exactly.
I will definitely keep calling.
From listening all those years, you know that I wouldn't be able to go anywhere near Sean Wheelock again if I gave it to you on your first call. So don't worry. Yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again. And what a great line it is as well.
Just before Johnson goes, can I make a suggestion for that future shirt name that's coming with that wonderful Kenyan accent? When he said Andy Carroll, it sounded very much like Auntie Carol. And I'm wondering whether, we could say that again, and whether that might sit on the back of the shirt.
That might be it. Who knows? That might be it. Get ready.
That's under advisement.
And whether you like it or not, you might get that one. Don't worry.
I know how it works, and I'll still really appreciate it. Oh my goodness, Auntie Carol.
You're going to have to wear it with pride.
I'll make sure I'll buy a Brazilian jersey and put that name on the back.
I look forward to that. No, not yet. You haven't been given it yet. Sean Wheelock would say, hey, how come he gets a Brazilian shirt name on his first call? I had to be here about 9 months before I got mine. Sorry for...
I'm just trying to be slick.
I know, you're very good. You know how to do it. Johnson, let's speak again next week or whenever you feel free.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. What a great line, and what a polite person, and also what an excellent speaker of the English language I thought of Johnson as well. They've got Brian in Fairfax with us. Hello, Brian.
Actually, it's Monotonio.
Oh, it's Monotonio. Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah,
because usually, you're somewhere else. Usually, you're in.
No, yeah, that's the neighborhood that I'm in. I'm still in Kansas. It's just a small neighborhood in Kansas. Yeah, it's yeah.
Because I'm going to Kansas City.
Dalton. Yeah. What are the rules?
I'm not allowed to sing. Yeah, those are the rules. Thank you for reminding me.
With a croaky voice.
Thank you for reminding me.
Dalton, you don't want to sing even, or even, I mean, you can hum a few bars, but you want to rest that voice. You want to leave the singing up to your missus.
I appreciate the concern. Yeah, I'll tell her that.
And Dalton, the similarities that you have voice-wise with your Brexit Prime Minister
yes.
do not extend to the dancing skills she displayed in Africa.
I enjoyed doing that dance at the time. Leave her alone. At least she took part, you know. I can't imagine Margaret Thatcher joining in. So I thought she was okay too. Yeah?
Dancing being brought up, did you put on a jig for everybody in the studio when they put on I Am a Football Fan, I Am a Soccer Fan?
Not tonight, because I thought, well, you know, because it's a sweet and sour night. It is. I mean, certainly the news from New Zealand leaves a sour taste in my mind. In any case,
our thoughts are definitely with them,
of course. And as much as we want to sort of make sure that, if you like, the bad guys don't win, that we can still carry on our lives somehow, you do have to give a thought to people out there in the families who are feeling it. So no, I didn't dance tonight.
You sure?
I gotcha.
Yeah, no, hopefully next week we'll be back on dancing form, hopefully. Anyway, it's not about my dancing, it's about your question. You know the rules, Monotonio.
Yes, Dalton, how about you put your feet up? I'll take it from here. So Tim and Mark, I have a question for both of you gentlemen, and you guys can kind of choose between the two of you who wants to go first. For Mark, with the Women's World Cup coming up, we have Nigeria and Cameroon, who were in the last World Cup and are back in again. South Africa is a debutante, so I'd like to know what everyone's chances are for this 2019 World Cup in France in a couple months' time. And Tim, my favorite club in Argentina, who Claudio Lopez, the former Racing player, got me hooked on those guys. They are looking like they're going to win their first title since Diego Milito led them to the title, and it is
steady on.
I mean, it's getting close. What has been, the keys to Racing being in the position that they are, considering that they sold a player, Martinez, for a tidy sum of money to Inter Milan?
With 4 minutes to the news, I'll take 30 seconds and let Tim wind the clock down for the next 10 minutes thereafter.
He is a wordsmith, after all.
I would say fairly slim. Nigeria are always the big hope for African women, but they've got a tough group with Norway and with the hosts France. South Africa are debutantes, as you say, and you're just happy to be there. They just played the tournament in Cyprus against all non-qualified teams and didn't win a single game, so that doesn't bode very well. And then Cameroon, a bit like the men's team, you don't really know what you get with them. They sometimes really put it together and sometimes really battle. I think there's resources problems as well in terms of their preparation. So, no, I think if an African side makes it past the group phase, that must be seen as a significant step forward for women's football.
Argentina, it's a terrific end to the season. We've got 3 rounds left and 1 point separates the top two. Racing, who are your Goliath, your giants of Argentine football, and the side 1 point behind them, little team, a neighbourhood team, Defensa y Justicia. Defensa y Justicia, defence and justice, some of the bizarre names you're going to get for a football team. And 3 rounds to go. And the last round, the fixture computer has done us proud. The last round, they will play each other. So hopefully the margin will not be bigger than 3 points when we come to the last round. It'll be a final. What is the secret of Racing's success? I suppose the main player has been Lisandro Lopez, the striker. I tell you, there's an easy way of showing how long he's been around the block. Once upon a time, years ago, he was linked to Charlton Athletic, who were in the Premier League at the time. So he's been the returning hero and the man around whom the attack is built. But for me, the big hero is the coach, Eduardo Coudet, who was one of those midfielders who's a good player but not a great player. When he came to Europe, played for Celta Vigo, was like less than 10 games and out. He wasn't quite good enough at the highest level, which means it makes him one of those players who always had to think about it. He's only a young coach, he's something like mid-40s, but his sides, they play wonderful passing football. One of the positive things about Argentina is the young coaches that the country is producing, and Eduardo Coudet is certainly going places, I think. Needs to calm down a little bit. These last 3 rounds will be a big test of his temperament, but I think he's a coach to watch, and I think Racing against Defensa y Justicia, last round of the Argentine Championship, it's a glorified final. It should be great.
We're talking football in Africa and South America, and players from over there playing in our leagues. We've got the Springbokker Junior, Mark Gleeson, in South Africa. Oh, I forgot to write it down. Where are you again?
Come on, Dotson.
And I'm letting the side down, aren't I? Oh, gosh, I forgot.
Nel Sprate.
Nel Sprate. Have you ever been there, Tim? Have you ever been to Nel Sprate?
Well, I've never been to Africa, but it looks like Nelspruit. It was one of the venues for the World Cup, if I remember rightly. It's where I learnt the name of this place. But
okay.
I love. Say it again, Gleeson. It's brilliant.
Sprate, but where do you get Sprout from? And there's no OUT in the thing. It's Sprate. A Sprate is a little stream.
It's a UIT.
Tim Vickery is in Rio, which is so much easier to spell, isn't it, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
Isn't it just, yeah.
Just checking. And he's taking care of your questions on South American football. Dossie McLeod, have you been to Nels Sprate? Did you know about that before?
I have not, and I also did not know that that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, so. This is the problem, isn't it? In our game, there's nobody to tell you how it's pronounced.
There's no hiding place.
Well, I've tried to hide under the table each time. I couldn't even remember what the name of the place was. But thankfully, the Springbokker Junior's here to give us a right pronunciation, you know.
Well, I'll tell you what, you couldn't do, sorry about that noise, you couldn't do too badly to hide away in Nelspruit. It is a magnificent place. It is incredibly hot all year round. And of course, it's on the border of the absolutely magnificent Kruger Park, which awaits me in about an hour.
I know. I said we're going to come on to that.
Moving from you straight onto the elephant.
I haven't forgotten. But can we go back to that noise that you apologised for? What was that you dropped?
I dropped the computer cable on the lovely wooden floor here.
I was hoping you'd say a clanger, but never mind. Yeah, actually, you've got an email there, Dottie, for us.
I do, yes. And if I'm being a little bit lenient with pronunciation, you'll have to forgive me.
You're going to do better than me, which is a good news for everybody listening.
Well, we'll see. This is from Mark in Glasgow. So nice to hear from you, Mark. Hello, Dotton, Tim and Mark. Pleasure to be conversing with you once again on this terrific show. Oh, Mark can come again, can't he?
Of course he can.
I have a couple of questions on African football. Firstly, I'm a Partick Thistle fan, and some 20 years ago, we signed the Namibian Quinton Jacobs at what was really a low ebb for the club at the time. He spent one season before moving on to MSV Duisburg.
That's not bad.
Duisburg in Germany, yes.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
No, that's not bad.
My question is, what's he up to these days? His Wikipedia article is wildly out of date, and I'm curious about the fate of one of our cult heroes.
I was actually...
go on.
I was actually, a quick answer for you. I was actually talking about him the other day with someone, and we both have absolutely no idea, but I will make it my mission to tell you, to give you an answer when I return next month.
Yeah,
that's a promise.
So, Mark in Glasgow, you wasted the first paragraph of your email, but never mind. Write it again, send it again in a month's time.
You can't say fairer than that for honesty.
Yeah, no, it's good, it's good.
Second half, staying in Africa, it's common in Europe to see players at the end of their careers return to their first club or country, like Dennis Rommedahl returning to Brøndby, for example. Is the reason we don't see African players doing similar down to money entirely, or are there other factors in it, such as any animosity towards foreign-based players, like, I don't know, Dotton has said has affected Nigeria in the past? Apologies for the long-winded question. I hope you understand what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I don't really know the scientific answer to that, but I would suggest that it's to do with cash. I mean, a lot of players, must remember, don't really go back to their roots in Africa. The football is the conduit to move away from your circumstance. There's also not that romantic element that you have in the game, particularly in Europe, and particularly in sort of in northern European countries where you leave a well-established neighbourhood side and you go on to sort of represent so well at the highest levels in world football, and you sort of come back to the fawning local populace where mom and dad still stay, and you have that sort of almost that duty, that obligation to finish it off romantically with your hometown club, which is such a wonderful part of football. We lack that a little bit on the African continent. This the romance of the game is not as finely tuned, I would say, as it is in Europe, and it's a big pity, because I think people would really enjoy it, followers of African football here in Africa. But no, that's not at all a common trend, and unfortunately so, because can you imagine what some of these players who've gone off and done so incredibly well could do in their formative years, or their footballing salad days back in their hometowns and in their home communities? They would be absolutely massive for the game, particularly at a developmental level.
Yeah, usually I say
Is that
don't.
anything to do with a kind of lack of identity of the clubs? Because that's big in South America, and especially in Argentina. The kind of returning hero coming back. But when you're coming back to your club, you are rejoining an entity that has a tradition, and it has a huge tradition and a huge, powerful entity, an identity. Do African clubs lack that?
That's very true. They do. If you look at I'll take Nigeria as an example. You look at the Nigerian Professional League 15 years ago, and you juxtaposition that with the current log. There's probably no more than 5-6 teams who remain, and that is true of most of sub-Saharan Africa. The north has a bit more of that tradition and teams that really extend back. But yes, that's true, and I think that's down to the fluid economic situation on this continent. Teams do crash and burn. Teams at the top level crash and burn quite a bit. And conversely, you see a lot of sides. I mean, there are a lot of sides competing in the African Champions League, particularly in the early rounds this year, who were only 10, 15 years old, normally because there's some sort of benefactor who's pumped some money in, and as soon as he disappears off the scene, they go out of business.
So we've given Dottie McLeod first run out on the pitch of the World Football Phone-In. You've got to blood them young, as they say. Did it feel okay? You enjoyed it?
Well, I did enjoy it.
You know, you are part of the team now.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Well, yeah, you'll be here. And the way that was that kind of like sarcastic towards me when you said, because you're looking at me in a way. Exactly. You should see the way she's looking at me now.
No, I hope to be asked back.
Yeah, of course.
So I should stop being so cheeky.
No. You can be as cheeky as you want. It's your program after all, you know. It's nothing to do with me. No, great. Thank you, actually, Dottie.
I'll see you soon.
I can't believe that you said you would be unsure about the pronunciation and you didn't get a single one wrong. That's not bad, you know.
Well, hold that thought.
Well, I'm going to give you a trickier one next time. Yeah, and enjoy the 71 million quid. Was it you that won it?
I wish.
Thank you, Dottie McLeod. So, lots of questions for you both now. And did we finish the other part of... oh, yeah, we did finish. You did finish Monotonia's questions, didn't you, both of you?
Yes, we've done.
Yeah,
Before
you
the
did.
3 o'clock news.
Okay, great. This other one...
Right on time as well.
Yeah,
Indeed.
it was with about
Good
10
point.
seconds to spare as well. We've got Alan in Santa Monica with us now. Hello, Alan.
The ref.
Yeah, good.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, no, yes, the ref. I just had to get on and talk to you guys because I've been watching the Champions League this week and the VAR is driving me crazy. The one that got me most was that one where Sterling scores a goal and everybody cheers, and then they wind it back, and then the ball might have gone out in the build-up to the play, and so for 2 minutes they're going backwards and forwards, looking at maybe a centimetre, and then there's people saying, well, the ball is round, so it could be overhanging the line. That's not what, and then people are all waiting in the stadium to cheer and so on and what have you. So to me as a referee, I hate it. But my question really is for Mark, saying, well, the people in Africa have all been watching this. What do they make of it? You know, it's never going to get into the game down there. What do they think of VAR from an African perspective?
Well, I think it's going to have to get down into the game here eventually, and hopefully technology will provide a sort of a cheaper answer, because at the moment the reason why it's not been introduced is obviously cost level, although the Nations Cup in June, July will have VAR. The African Champions League final last year already had VAR for the first time, and the league in Morocco claim that they will introduce it from next season, although I'm a little skeptical about whether that's just a bit of PR. So, you know, it has to arrive eventually. I think the mixed reception that it's received worldwide from people like yourselves and everyone else is probably probably reflects the views here on this continent as well. And I think it'll become a more vociferous and more poignant debate when it obviously affects not just matches that you're watching on television from an African perspective, but matches that you're keenly following with your own side involved, and that you might be watching in the stadium at a big tournament like the Nations Cup.
I think Alan makes a good point, though. There might be some cultural differences, though, in the way that VAR is received, not least by the fans as well. And we know how these things can influence a match, the fans' response or otherwise. I wonder whether when VAR kicks in Africa, there will be the kind of 2 or 3 minute delay over whether the ball was off, went off for a throw-in or not, in the way that he describes what happened in the Champions League.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the sophisticated coverage of VAR means that your African supporter, by the time it's introduced, will be well au fait with its foibles and its positives and its negatives, and I think that I think it'll work very well in this continent. It's something I'm a supporter of. We just discussed this before, and I think it's a question of fine tuning. It does have its drawbacks at the moment, but the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Tom, and thanks, Helen, by the way. Tom says by email, usually I send an email when it's beer o'clock in Australia, in Brisbane, but I'm currently in Tim's current home of Brazil, sitting in a lovely small city called Praia do Forte, which is about 40 minutes from Salvador. Listen to the podcast during the week, and was surprised that no one asked about David Neres. Watched the Ajax versus Real Madrid game in Belo Horizonte during Carnival, and he, along with Tadic, was superb. Firmino isn't quite doing it, leading the line with Brazil. Is he, as in Neves, a possible candidate? And he says obrigado, by the way. He says obrigado just to show that he is in
he's welcome.
Brazil. Yeah, you're welcome too. Yeah, you're welcome too.
Yeah,
I was there, by the way, at the World Cup.
Oh, at Praia de Forte?
I was in Salvador for most of the time, and
Okay.
we went up to visit. We went up the coast for quite a few sort of trips on day off. Fabulous part of the world.
Keep that in mind, and thanks for that information. All travel information is most welcome on a World Football Phone, you know that. Tim?
The only time I was in Salvador, I got mugged at gunpoint about 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. But a lovely part of the world. Yeah, don't let me put you off it. In fact, I was wandering around thinking, this is great. I'm going to have to bring her indoors up for a holiday. I was just thinking that at the very time when this undesirable element, this rather charmless young man, came up on his motorbike and pulled out quite a large pistol. Anyway, David Neres, he's just been called up. He wasn't originally in the Brazil squad. They faced Panama in the Czech Republic in the FIFA dates. He wasn't originally called up. But with Vinicius Junior pulling out through injury, he's got his chance. He was part of the under-20 squad that Richarlison was a part of as well, just over 2 years ago, that failed to make it to the World Under-20 Cup. He was with Sao Paulo then, and he very quickly afterwards went to Ajax. And going to Ajax, it kind of means you're a little bit off the radar screen until now. Until those games against Real Madrid, there have been some kind of murmurings around him, but the games against Real Madrid, wow, we got another one here. The questions seem to indicate that he may be an option for the centre-forward position, with the comparison with Firmino. That's not the way, I don't think, that he's seen over here or is being seen but by the Brazil coaching staff. I think that they will see him as yet another. It's a position where Brazil are so blessed with the amount of players that they have, strikers from wide positions. So I think he can play either flank. But the problem there is you got such competition to get in just to get a game. So I would have thought that if they're looking because they haven't really clicked since the World Cup. And they've decided to go with Firmino at centre forward, and so far it hasn't worked. The parts just haven't clicked. So one option is to persevere with this and try and get it to work, and the other is to go for a more orthodox centre forward. Now, from the players that they've got at the moment, they haven't picked like a number 9. They've got William José in Spain. They've got Joelinton in Germany, but they haven't picked that kind of player. The one that they've got that's closest to a penalty area operator, number 9 figure, is Richarlison, who I think would be ahead of David Neres for that position. I think David Neres at the moment is in competition for one of the wide striker places. But he's going to have to do well in order to stay in, because long term he's competing with the likes of Neymar and Vinicius Junior. So he's going to have to make the most of his opportunity. But he has suddenly, although that game games against Real Madrid did wonders for his profile back home.
This from Stephen Glasgow for both of you. Across Europe, we often tend to hear a certain team, rightly or wrongly, being labelled by fans as quote-unquote the establishment club, whether it's due to most title and cup wins historically or in association with the elite figures, and receiving what many opponents perceive to be special treatment from authorities, particularly refereeing decisions. Teams of example include Real Madrid, I don't know about that. Real Madrid, Juventus and Bayern Munich, who have won the most honours in their respective leagues, as well as the London Corinthians, an exclusive club for gentlemen that inspired Real Madrid to wear the famous white colours we know today. Can Mark and Tim provide a list of clubs from their respective regions that would fall under this category and why? I'd be keen to hear their thoughts. Mark first.
I would say that there are a couple, particularly in North Africa. Esperance of Tunisia is a great example. The president used to be the son-in-law of the country's president. They wiped the floor in domestic competition and always were perennial challengers in the African Champions League, making it through to the final four on most occasions. And it was always perceived that they were given a helping hand by state money, the referees. Things just always seem to go their way, and they remain the biggest club in Tunisia, and they remain incredibly hated by everybody else. I think Al Ahly of Egypt is a little bit like that, although it is a club historically that comes more, has a sort of a political background in the resistance to British rule. So to call them an establishment club might not be politically correct, but I think, over 100 years, they've turned into that in Egypt. They're also the team where it's always perceived that they get the best players, and there's referees seem to be a little more lenient towards them. Those dodgy penalties that don't go your way when you support one of the smaller teams always seem to go the big club's way. That's certainly true of Esperance and Al Ahly. In West Africa, not really that much, and I think in Eastern South Africa as well, there's not really a team with an incredibly long history that's been as dominant as the likes of Real Madrid. And in an African perspective, I'd say I'm going to just put Esperance and Al Ahly on that list.
Tim?
The big clubs from the capital, and most South American countries are very, very centralised. So almost all of the big clubs are usually clustered in the capital, and the big clubs from the capital have huge political clout, and everything is always a conspiracy theory. I suppose one example, it's no longer the capital, but from here in Rio, Fluminense, the daddies of them all, really, the traditional club of the Rio elite. And their kind of function room in their stadium, which they don't use as a stadium anymore. But the function room, it's stunning. You feel like you're in the Vatican or something. It's amazingly ornate. The ground looks like a cricket pavilion. It was a club of João Havelange, for example, and I'm actually worried about their long-term future. I think they're in a real financial mess. But over the last 25 years or so, there have been a number of times when they've been relegated, and ways are found to keep them up. Ways that, little levers are pushed, and the team is punished for fielding ineligible players, or something happens that preserves Fluminense in the first division. So that's something that rival supporters will often point at them. In Argentina, I think some people would say the same about River Plate. River Plate usually favoured, but if you're a River Plate fan, you would say the same about Boca Juniors. So the one thing that you will never get rid of here is the whole world is a conspiracy against my team. That's the way that so much football operates.
Yeah, I think it's Cian here. It could be Cian, apologies, from Dublin, who's a Shamrock Rovers fan. Guess where he is currently? Tim, guess.
There's a whole big world out there.
What did you say, Mark?
Salvador.
There's a whole big world out there, Tim. But at least Mark had a good guess at it, and he got it right. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, wow.
Yeah?
Wow.
Well, not quite Salvador.
Who's going to win the
Cheltenham
Gold Cup, Mark? Let's bet on it now.
It's already been. You've missed it. Anyway,
all right.
This is, he's not quite in Salvador. He's in the right country because he starts it off, Boa Noche Galera. What does that mean?
Good night. Good evening, everyone.
You had to think about it. You've been living there how long? Anyway, he says, I'm Sean from Dublin, Ireland, a fan of Shamrock Rovers, currently in Rio the last month. Question for Tim, planning on travelling all over South America in the next few months, but what I would love to know is what are the must-see stadiums and teams I need to see in my time here, other than the obvious Boca versus River Plate matches? Are there any hidden gems of stadiums with great history that I might miss along the way? So far, I've been to see Vasco, Flamengo, Fluminense, Bahia, and Vitoria. Muito obrigado.
He's certainly welcome. I mean, there are plenty. I mean, the most history is in the South Cone. If he wants to go a little bit further south, he can go to Santos and see where Pele gave masterclass after masterclass for history. And then when you get to Argentina and Uruguay, you've got to go to the Centenario in Uruguay. It's the stadium where the first World Cup final was held back in 1930. From Argentina, it doesn't have to be Boca against River. Boca against anyone, almost any Argentine stadium, Racing or Independiente, that are just like a couple of hundred yards apart in the working class suburb of Avellaneda. Hugely historic stadiums there in Argentina. If you go into Chile, then from the point of view of history, then the national stadium in Santiago is full of history, both football and cultural, for some good reasons and also for some absolutely dreadful reasons. For my mind, the blackest page in the history of FIFA took place in that stadium in 1973. So that's I think another must visit. If you make it to Paraguay, then the Defensores del Chaco is an interesting stadium to see. An interesting place to watch your football. And the place is absolutely teeming with old stadiums. And so I'm always convinced when you go into an old stadium, all of that noise and all of that passion, it's there somewhere. It's just hanging on the air. When you go into a new kind of antiseptic stadium, you don't feel the same thing. You don't feel that you're in some kind of communion with the people who've been in that game. Going through all the emotions that we go through as football fans. If it's a new kind of antiseptic stadium, for me, it's lacking that kind of history thing. But any stadium that you wander around, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, the importance that the teams have to that neighbourhood mean that you are part of a communion that goes back for 120 years. So go round, and when you've gone round, come back and tell us which made the biggest impact on you.
This is an email from AJ, who is in Carterton, New Zealand, who says, I've been listening to your show for about 9 years, usually via podcasts. It's Saturday afternoon here when the show is on, and usually there are jobs to do, and I'm just about to go out and feed some cows. No question today, but just a thank you for having your show on today. It's a tough time here with what's happened, and we visited a local mosque which had an open day for people to visit. Was glad that you had your number one team on with Mark and Tim, or Greenwich and Haynes. Once again, thank you very much for the show, especially today. It's been great to focus on something else for a while. Sean in Maryland, USA, welcome to the World Football Phone-In.
Hi, Don. How are you doing this fine evening?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for asking. Tim and Mark are here as well, and it's all yours. You have the platform. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. Guys, it's a pleasure to be on. It's a pleasure to talk with you. I had a question for Tim. From my region, I'm from Maryland. The team that's local is DC United, and one of our top players is an Argentine, Lucho Acosta. He played with Werney last year, and he was actually the rumors of a transfer to Paris Saint-Germain in the offseason for about 11 million euros, give or take. The rumor here was that DC United pulled out. I was wondering what that move was thought of in South America and what Tim knows about that move and why it didn't happen.
I'm not sure. I would be very surprised to see him as a player who would get game time at Paris Saint-Germain. I remember Paris Saint-Germain have on their books a fabulous midfielder in Giovanni Lo Celso, an Argentine midfielder, and they can't use him. They've loaned him out to Betis of Spain, where he's having a terrific season. If there's no place for Lo Celso in their team, I couldn't see where little Acosta was going to fit in. So all of that was kind of transfer speculation that I just couldn't understand. And I wonder, you never know, but I wonder in these situations if this might be his agent creating mischief, planting this to kind of flush out interest in him from some other European club. I mean, it is big. especially now that Almiron, the Paraguayan who came from Argentine football and went to MLS and has now gone to Newcastle, the idea of using MLS as a trampoline to get to Europe is now in their minds, where I don't think it was 5 years ago. I mean, Argentines have been doing very well in MLS for a while, but I don't think a few years ago that it was really seen as a potential shop window for Europe. But since Almiron, it is. And Gonzalo Martinez, who's now replacing Almiron at Atlanta United, he speaks openly about this. What I really want to do is go to Europe, and I'm hoping that I can do well at Atlanta in order to go there. If I can ping this one back to you, Sean. You've got another South American there. You've got Venezuelan midfielder Junior Moreno. How has he settled in?
Quite well. He has kind of taken over for another South American who just left, Yamil Asad, who I think has gone to Mexico. And it's been interesting watching the influence of Wayne Rooney on this team with the players like Segura and Acosta, because they really kind of were missing that centerpiece to kind of maneuver players around the pitch and to be able to give them a little bit more organization. And Segura has taken off quite nicely. He had a game-winning goal last season against, I think it was the Colorado Rapids, and he's done just some amazing things in terms of being able to it seems like it's instilled a lot of confidence in him that I don't quite think he had entering into it. DC is a very interesting team in that the coach was a former defensive midfielder. And so having players that are a little bit more attack oriented has kind of shifted the philosophy. And it's he's doing quite well. I'm curious if if Tim knows if he might be getting a call up for Copa America this summer.
If who's going to get a call up? Acosta?
Segura.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. There aren't many from MLS who go. There are more from MLS now getting call-ups for South American national teams. I mean, for Argentina to do it with Pity Martinez is almost wow. It's a breakthrough moment. I remember Paraguay called up a while ago when Osorio was still the coach. He's bailed out now, and there were more players from MLS than there were from any other league bar Paraguay itself, which is a huge moment.
That was for the friendly in South Africa in November.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one that was ended up being his only game in charge. So MLS is clearly making huge progress. I'll be interested to see if we go forward a little bit. If we have some kind of competition that brings in MLS teams with the big South American teams, some kind of Pan-American competition that would put them on a level playing field. And for me, it's a possible saviour for South American club football. It would do wonders for the profile back home of South Americans who are playing in MLS. I'm very interested to see if that's going to be the future.
Sean, first-time caller?
No, I've actually been on a couple times before. I was on here a couple years ago to talk about a cookbook, actually. It was for the Gold Cup. So this is, but second, I think it's my second time calling in. So it's always fun to banter and on a Friday evening.
So we won't be hearing from you again until after Donald Trump is will he be re-elected?
Donald Trump is what? Sorry.
I garbled it because I realised I'm not allowed to interfere in the American presidential elections like the Russians are. Anyway, so we'll be hearing from you again in 2 years' time, is what I'm saying.
Well, the Gold Cup is this summer, so maybe you'll hear from me sooner rather than later.
I hope so.
I hope so. With the puppeteers in the back, right?
I hope so. You sound great anyway, and you know your stuff. So anytime, feel free, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Cheers, guys.
Pleasure. Colin is a long-suffering Bafana fan, Mark, and he wants me to ask you if the issue with the club is that there is too many prima donnas. Sorry, Bafana is the South African national team, isn't it?
Yes, this the famous club that you have, the Super Eagles. You know that club?
Yeah. I apologise. At least I apologise.
Why is it Bafana? And if it was just one Bafana, would that change the meaning at all?
No, it's just a sort of a diminutive with the double, but it means the same. It's the lads, it's the chaps.
How could a diminutive be longer?
Yes.
What kind of diminutive is longer than the original
That's
word?
a misunderstanding of the language.
Differently on this continent. We do things differently on this continent.
It's true. It's very true. Anyway, now that we've sorted that out, as a long-suffering Bafana fan, can you ask Mark, is the issue that there are too many prima donnas at club level who never really gel at national level?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think that's sort of, that's this perspective of frustrated fans, and you can understand their feelings when the team persistently produces poor results, and when they do see the talent of some of the key players in club football, and they don't see it at national team level. But to presume that they're prima donnas and that they're not trying is not fair. I think I don't think anyone can accuse anyone of playing at that level of not giving it a decent go. But it's been a whole combination of factors. I do think South Africa is completely underwhelming in living up to its potential, and it's got a lot to do with politics and administration at times. I think sometimes it's got to do with there's a little bit of I think there's South Africans just generally in terms of their view of the continent is a little isolationist. I don't think there's and geographically too, and with the apartheid history, I don't think there's a real appreciation sometimes of the kind of fight and effort that you need to put in at international level to do well, and what is required, and there's perhaps not enough contact. Not enough South African players play overseas, so they all add into what's been a really, really disappointing national team. Hopefully that will change next Sunday.
But Colin will still be long-suffering.
Does anyone call you Mark Gleeson as a term of endearment? I mean, if there's one thing that someone who's 7'2" doesn't need, it's a diminutive.
Yeah, still on that.
I'm sure you've been called Tim in your time.
Yeah, Tim Timney, Tim Timney, Tim Timney, Tim. Anyway, talking of diminutive, this is a question from one of our listeners. Who's the best Premier League striker?
Which English Premier League?
Yes. Yeah. This is the diminutive bit. I was leaving a pregnant pause there. Is it Kane, or is it Mane, or is it Sane?
Well, Sane is a wide player, so he's disqualified. He's half Senegalese, by the way, so we will claim him. I think just in terms of goal score, it's got to be Kane over the last 2 years, but this season it's got to be Mane.
There you go. And Tim, you're not allowed to say Aguero. It's one of those three.
Well, I am, because Aguero's the shortest of all of them, so he's the most diminutive.
Let's go. You won't let that go, will you? It's tickled you.
Far too much small talk from you.
Very good. I like that. Put the ball on the penalty spot and Gleeson bangs it in, right in the top corner.
All the way from Nelspruit.
Indeed.
There we go.
I think he had great endearment towards the place.
Cleo in Aldershot. Hello. Welcome to the World Football Phone-In, Cleo. Cleo the book.
Hello, Dotton. Hello, Tim. Hello, Mark. It's funny talking about Aguero, because in 2007 I emailed him when he was in downtown Caracas covering the Copa America.
What, Aguero?
Aguero, yes, a 2007 under-20, and it's under-20s World Cup again this year in Poland.
You thought you had time to answer your email?
Yeah, he did.
Probably did.
He
did.
Industrious soul.
It was raining, so we didn't have much to do.
Oh, right. Good for you.
And he tipped Aguero to me to be the top player, and he was in the 2007 when Argentina won it. And it's
which leads to the next question, Cleo, is what's gone wrong since?
They haven't won. They haven't won it since 2007.
I'm talking about victory.
Yeah, there you go. It's a good question.
I should have quit when I was ahead.
He's become very diminutive since those days. Yeah. Is the point Mark's going to make.
Anyway, it's the 2019 World Cup in Poland. We should have to get a gent on to give us a lowdown on the Polish cities. And South Africa and Argentina in the Group S, and Poland, the hosts, are with Senegal, Can the lads give me an update on how their teams will do in this wonderful tournament coming up in May?
Yeah, Senegal used to be one of the powerhouses of African football, didn't it, Mark?
Well, no, I mean, they've never won a Nations Cup, remember that. They've been to the World Cup twice. I think they've, on the balance of 50 years or so of participation, they're probably amongst the greatest underachievers. But this is a bit of a golden period for them, and there's masses of quality Senegalese players in Europe at the moment. They could put 3 or 4 decent teams together who would compete at the highest level of the African game.
And Tim?
Well, we have 4 qualifiers. Again, Brazil failed to qualify. We've got Ecuador, Argentina, Uruguay and Colombia. The champions of our qualifying tournament were Ecuador, who looked really, really good. And they had several of their leading players injured. And even so, they played some really swashbuckling stuff. And they've revealed a very, very interesting group of players. I'm really interested to see how Ecuador get on. Argentina, you mentioned their 2007, and that's an important date for Argentina. Because between 1995 and 2007, they kept on winning the World Under-20 Cup. They won it in 95, in 97, in 2001, in 2005 and in 2007. Since then, they've been dreadful. And that's one of the reasons they've been so disappointing at senior level, and one of the reasons that their squad for the last World Cup last year was, I think, the oldest in Russia. This side that they're taking this year, I think, is the best Argentina under-20 side that we've seen for a while. I think that there's a few players here who may go on to be something. Uruguay are okay. Perhaps that they lack a little bit of star quality. Perhaps it's not quite as good as some of their recent under-20 sides. And Colombia, I think they're going to have to change their strikers because they couldn't buy a goal, but their defence was really, really impressive. Very, very well organised defence. So if I look across the South American challenges for this, I think I'll be a bit surprised if they win it in Poland. But at this level, winning is never the important thing. The important thing is how you develop your players. And if you win the thing, but 5 or 6 years later, none of those players have gone on to be consistent internationals at senior level, I would judge that as a failure. I think you have to look back a few years later before you can judge whether that work has been well done or not. And so often, I think teams with coaches who want to make a name for themselves, they take the short-term route by bulking up, just going with the ones who've developed precociously physically, who have a height and weight and size advantage over the opposition. That's in the long term, that's a very, very bad strategy. So I'll be a little bit surprised if one of these South American teams wins in Poland. But I would expect, especially from Ecuador and maybe from Argentina, I would expect 4 or 5 of these players to go on and become senior internationals for a considerable amount of time.
Clear the book. Thanks very much for the call. Let's speak to Kevin, who's in Thailand. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Dawson. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks so much. These overseas lines sound so clear. You sound literally as if you're in the next room. Impressive.
Good. Yeah, it's over FaceTime or Gmail, so much better than calling the normal line, I think.
It works. So what's Thailand like this morning?
Thailand's very good. It's a bit cloudy today, and the pollution is, as ever, absolutely fantastic. So I've been told to wear masks every day. But apart from that, it's nice and warm.
Are you in Bangkok?
I'm in Bangkok. Yeah, I moved here about 4 or 5 months ago. Yeah, from Tokyo. So quite new to Thailand.
And does it do what it says on the tin?
I'm here purely for business, Dotton.
Right, no, I didn't say anything. I didn't suggest otherwise, did I? Is it a wonderful city?
It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, Bangkok's got absolutely everything, and it's a great hub to get around Asia as well, because I travel quite a lot with work, so getting across to Cambodia and Laos, even Hong Kong isn't that far away as well.
Oh, so you're clearly a native because you say Laos as opposed to
Laos.
Laos, like the rest of us.
My brother goes there.
Yeah.
My brother lives in Cambodia, and he goes to Laos, and he's the one who taught me that if you know the thing, it's a bit like saying KL. If you know the thing, you're never gonna that S. Forget it. Forget about it.
Well, you say it's a bit like KL, but I tend to think it's a bit like Nelspruit.
There we go.
Yeah.
Finally, it's been an hour 50.
Sorry, Kevin. Internal joke. The floor's all yours. You go ahead.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, it's good to speak to you again, Dotton. We did meet at the 2013 event in Salford, actually, before the 2014 World Cup. There was a Portugal fan then.
I seem to remember that, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, well done. Wow, man. I'm really impressed.
So I've been listening religiously since then. I've been on a few times, and any excuse to bring it up. I was on the show again after Euro 2016, speaking to an angry Frenchman, but since then he's won the World Cup, so I can't really say much
Yes, exactly. And the angry Frenchman is a great commentator on his country's football. I think he brought in last time he came in, did he bring in some wine or something like that? I can't remember anyway. Thank goodness
Cyril,
he didn't.
Cyril, yeah, seems a great guy, Cyril, yeah.
At least he doesn't bring in a cockerel. That's all I'm fearful of, that one day he'll bring in a cockerel and throw it into the studio.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not in my studio. But anyway, Kevin, let's not interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I asked the same question a few years ago, but a lot of time has passed since then. So I was talking about players such as Ricardo Quaresma, Alvaro Recoba, and even Neil Lamptey from a generation before. Players who, when they were below, under the age of 23, they were going to be the next big thing. And since then, well, I've got a few players in mind who perhaps, 5 years ago we thought were going to be the next big thing, but didn't make it. Players such as Gansel from Brazil, Juan Iturbe, from South America, then maybe Mbaye Niang, who is representing Senegal. So any players who 5 years ago you thought were going to be the next big thing, but haven't quite made it to that, top level.
Good question. Who wants to go first?
Well, I can maybe deal with Niang, who was on the radar for France, and in fact, I think a junior international for France. So his sort of declaration for Senegal came during the qualifiers for the last World Cup, and he frankly was, given his profile in Europe and the clubs that he's played for in particular, a bit of a disappointment. But he's had a bit of a checkered time off the field as well, controversial car accidents, etc. And I think he's a player who could still. With a bit of maturity in his later 20s, I think he could still be quite a big factor in the Senegalese team, and he could be one of the better African players on the European stage.
Tim?
Too many to mention, but I'll focus on a couple. One is a Colombian, Marlos Moreno, who I saw towards the end of 2015. I was watching a lot of Colombian football, and he won the championship for Atlético Nacional. So I went big on him. Going into the Libertadores that year, the following year, 2016, I said, this is the fella to watch. This is the fella to watch. And he was absolutely sensational. One of the best young talents I've ever seen. And I was sitting back thinking, oh, look, I spotted that one first. Look at that. He was brilliant. And at every level, even got into the national team. He was for Colombia, was doing great things. And then Man City bought him. And since then, it's almost been nothing for nearly 3 years. And City loaned him to La Coruña. He didn't do a great deal there. They loaned him to Girona. He couldn't get a game there. He was then loaned to Flamengo here in Rio. And he was going to be working with the coach. And this is the luck thing. First of all, I don't like the loan moves. Where a player goes to a club that have no long-term interest in him. I think that can fail so often. And he was going to come back and he was going to work with the Colombian coach who he'd worked with successfully at Atlético Nacional. But an offer then came in for that coach, Rueda, to coach Chile. So by the time Marlos Moreno came to Flamengo, new coach who'd never heard of him didn't want to use him. So he spent a year just kicking his heels there. He's now at Mexico, Santos Laguna at Mexico, and I think he started off all right. But I don't think, when you lose that amount of momentum for 3 years, that has a serious effect. And maybe he's a consequence of moving too far too fast. The move to Manchester City, who didn't need him, so loaned him out. I think that is fraught with dangers. And another example that comes to mind is Sergio Diaz, a little little Paraguayan. There's a little bit of Aguero in him. And he was at the age of like 15, 16. He's doing it in the Paraguayan league, in the big game. And you're thinking, wow. So he went to Real Madrid, was playing for Real Madrid B. But then came the injuries, and at the moment, I think he's in Brazil with Corinthians, but he can't seem to get a game there. And I wonder if his problem is being overplayed too young. And I remember one year he played the South American Under-20 Championships and then the South American Under-17 Championships. And in between, he was playing for his club side. And the body that takes a toll on the body. So that, I think, is another risk, playing too much football too early. So there are so many aspects to that. There are never any guarantees. So many things can happen to the player's mental state, to his fitness, to his form. And at the end of the day, there's a human being there. And I don't think there's another profession in the world that has these steps up. You know, if you think of a player at 18 who's not playing for his first team, he's not even a household name in his own home. And then he gets into the first team and suddenly his work, and not only his work, but his worth as a human being is being judged by thousands inside the stadium and millions watching on TV. It's not surprising that not everyone can cope with that step up.
Is it the case, Kevin, that what will be in terms of footballers?
I think one thing which I really think is important when a player makes the move is, I like to use examples, and one would be when Ronaldo moved to Man United and Quaresma moved to Barcelona. Of course, Ronaldo going to work for Fergie, who he knows how to deal with young players, and Rijkaard, who was, a young coach and clearly maybe wasn't as experienced. Obviously, attitude's a big thing as well, but I think moving to the right coach really can make a huge difference alongside attitude. So really, they're the two keys, because talent really isn't everything at all. It's not even 50% in my eyes.
Well, yeah,
this is 50% attitude. So.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. This is why I asked the question, Mark. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, is it, for a footballer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the forces, Tim's described it well. I think the forces that pull and tug on you. And remember the competition as well. There is someone biting for your place, giving his all 24/7. It's absolutely relentless, the competition, and eventually it's surprising that some of these players have as long and successful a career as they do under such incredible pressure. It really does speak to their particular human spirit. But it is incredibly tough in that football cauldron.
Is it more about human spirit, Tim, than, I know there will be some footballers who have serious injuries, but that we know, don't we? Look at Aaron Ramsey. Do you remember the injury that he had? He literally broke his leg. And now he's going to, play for inordinate amounts of money every week from Arsenal. There are some footballers who transgress physical...
transcend.
Sorry, apologies. Transcend, thank you for that.
I'm here for.
It is
what was your degree in again?
It's horrible. It's horrible,
Norwegian.
Don't worry.
Wasn't it Norwegian?
No, yeah, it started off as English. But what did you get in your English A-level then, Tim, clever boy?
I'm really not going to... I'll be accused of boasting.
No, you won't. Not compared to me. Go on.
Well, you
just answer the question.
No, you couldn't do it. And that's what I got.
You got an A?
Sorry.
Did you really get an A?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well,
I'm not playing this game
language
anymore.
And literature. Yeah.
I know, I'm not playing the game anymore.
There aren't many things I can do in this world.
I'm not playing the game anymore.
Was one of them.
How many more times do I have to tell you? I'm not playing that game anymore. Is it about spirit or not?
Well, I think with injuries, if you are a player who relies on speed and you suffer an injury that reduces your speed, that's really, really hard. Because you have to reinvent yourself as a player. So it depends a little bit on the type of player that you are, the type of injury that you suffer, and the consequences of it. But yeah, I'm with Kevin and Mark and yourself on this one. What we see is time and time again, talent is not enough. The people at Sporting Lisbon will tell you that Quaresma is more talented than Cristiano Ronaldo. What's the difference between them? Attitude, I think, more than anything else.
Kevin, help me redeem myself. What did you get at A-level?
I got 3 C's at A-level from my memory.
Thank goodness. I feel
not
better already.
Just enough to get into university. That's all you needed.
I feel better already. Kevin, call up any time.
Thank you very much, Don. Cheers, guys.
Yeah, make me feel good. Mark, I won't ask in case I come crashing back down to earth. But thank you and enjoy your day at the game park.
Thanks very much, Dotton.
Don't kill any wildlife. Tim, thanks.
This